So last month I did an unanswered questions episode on aliens, so I figured it only seemed natural that I move on to the Predator films. I really enjoy these films, most of them, and they really haven't gone too far into the backstories of the Predator's race in the movies, so there's lots to cover, and since the films aren't really even connected to each other, there's plenty of things left unanswered. And if I know me, I'm gonna take my time getting through these, and you may be saying, hey, quit stalling, and just throw your hands up in the air and say, get to the answers! Question number 1. Here's one that's pretty much a fundamental one, and that's why don't they just drop their weapons? In the first movie, it's a bunch of soldiers in the woods. They're all pretty heavily armed. They're the perfect bunch of targets for a creature that enjoys hunting dangerous prey. I mean, let's face it, if it's the 80s and you're looking for the ideal challenge, you don't get any more, hey, come fight me, than Arnold. But Dutch doesn't really have that much interest in fighting it, especially when all of his crew start dying off all around him. So, near the end, when they realize that it didn't kill Anna because she was unarmed, why doesn't everyone just drop their weapons, but just put their hands up and just stroll to the helicopter? The Predator wouldn't see them as any sort of threat, so it wouldn't attack, and they could just leave, right? Well, first of all, we have no way of knowing this. It was an assumption that Dutch made based upon a single observation. There was absolutely no way for him and his team to know that this was an accurate assessment. And if they were wrong, it would pretty much mean that they were all unable to defend themselves and would probably be wiped out pretty quickly. Plus, old Labia Face had already tagged them as good game, so I hardly think that he'd just shrug his shoulders and be like, oh well, I guess this isn't sporting anymore. I mean, after all, in the finale, Dutch isn't armed anymore, and it's still coming after him. It's really clear that it still views him as a worthy opponent, guns or not. In actuality, he made the smartest move in staying weaponed up than heading away from the chopper, indicating himself as the true trophy and allowing the rest to get away clear. Get to the chopper! Question number 2. What's up with that laugh at the end? So at the ending of the movie, the Predator is defeated. He's crushed by the rock that Dutch had set up. It wasn't exactly the way that the trap was supposed to happen, but hey, whatever works, right? Dreadlocks is mortally wounded and going to die, and activates a self-destruct mechanism that begins to count down before completely destroying the area around him. And can I just take a second to admire how difficult that this has to be for this guy? Look at these claws that this sucker has. I mean, I can barely type out texts without 4 errors because my damn fingers just seem to get in the way. And this dude's just clicking away like my sister after getting out of Nails Plus. Anyway though, before exploding, he lets out a laugh. And to be clear, it's not a Predator laugh. It's a mimicked laugh. It's Billy from back when he was told the Echo joke. Now, there seems to be some arguing about whether this species simply records audio and then plays it back, or if they are genuinely able to mimic the sounds that they hear. And I think that this scene proves the latter. His mouth is clearly moving here. He's laughing and imitating the sounds that Billy made and adding a little sinister spin to it as well. But is it sinister? Was it a sort of, you may think that you got the last laugh, but check this out kind of thing? If so, wasn't the whole thing about this race that they're sporting? That they like the challenge and going up against difficult prey? What's sporting about a big bomb? Myself, I feel like that's a little outside of what they had previously established with this creature. When his prey was armed, he was armed. When his prey was unarmed, he went one-on-one. For the most part, he chose to keep himself on an even keel with his opponents, just a sneakier version of using the weapons. But this is just petty and sore losery. For me, I think that it clearly activates the bomb as Dutch is looking on. It sees him run away. It most likely knows that his prey will get away and win, or at least has a sporting chance. A chance he gives him by showing him the countdown and the fact that there's a countdown at all. I'm assuming if there's an option to do a countdown, there's probably an option to just instantly explode as well. The Predator willingly gives him that chance to run away and get cover. So, what's the laugh? Simple, he saw how laughs are used, to laugh at the absurdity of things. The alien is laughing at the fact that he's lost, and to a mere human at that. I mean, if you can call Arnold a mere human, sorry Arnold, I mean no disrespect. You're never going to see this video. Question number 3. Where did Dutch go after the movie? At the end of the first film, Dutch has survived his encounter and is picked up by the chopper, and then promptly vanishes from the series. He was in talks to come back for Predator 2, but it came down to money, and his role was greatly altered and reduced to become the part that Gary Busey would play, and because of this, he's never shown in the later films and barely mentioned. When Predators was made, Robert Rodriguez had written an ending scene that featured the character. After Royce and Isabel defeated the Predators there, a ship would land and a group of new enemies would emerge. After a moment, a leader would appear from the ship and remove his helmet, revealing himself to be Dutch, who would then congratulate the pair on their win. This was scrapped due to Arnold not being available, and it's also possible that it was a fake ending that was thrown together to detect script leaks. Stories conflict. It's also been stated that he may have appeared in the first AVP film, but after winning the California election to become governor, he dropped out of any acting roles. He was also offered a spot in the Shane Black Predator film, but turned it down after he read what it would entail, saying that he didn't like it, so he wouldn't do it. Probably a good move. The character did appear in a bunch of the expanded universe tales, such as the novel Predator South China Sea, in which he shows up in flashbacks as the main character seeks help in getting information about the hunters. He's not called by name, but in description seems to be Dutch, and was confirmed as him by the book's author. There was also a storyline in the Dark Horse comic books featuring Dutch's brother, who had a very similar look and would also come up against the Predators, and would end up searching for his missing sibling. That storyline would end in a cliffhanger though, and the two would never be reunited. The most concrete answer about where Dutch went can be found in the novelization of the second movie, which goes into detail about what happens to him after the events of the first film. Seems he went into a form of shock and suffered from radiation poisoning, maybe because he was standing about 10 feet away from what looked like a nuclear bomb, and ended up in a hospital. He would be visited by Busey's Keys and be debriefed on the situation. After they don't believe him and subject him to polygraphs, he ends up ripping out his IV and escaping the hospital and vanished. It's said that the hospital staff and security thought that in his condition, without the treatments that they were giving him, he would die very quickly. But Keys didn't think so, and seriously, this is the guy who survived being like 50 feet away from what looked like an A-bomb going off. I'm gonna bet that he survived. There was an alternate fate given for the character in the 2020 video game Predator Hunting Grounds, and this could probably be deemed a little more official considering that it features Arnold himself. In the game, there's a series of audio recordings that explain that after the first film, Dutch traveled the world and eventually teamed up with the group from Predator 2 and continues to fight the Predators, getting cybernetic upgrades to continue the fight. Again, whether you want to consider this as canon or not is debatable. Question number 4. What happened to Anna after the first movie? Well, let's talk about Anna for a moment. She's a captive of Dutch's team and was a member of the guerrilla group that they assault early in the film. What's weird is that by the ending of the movie, she's one of the crew and a quote good guy, even though she was a part of the group that was apparently only worthy of one liner capped death earlier. It's kind of weird how we're rooting for her to actively avoid getting killed, and yet her compatriots get slaughtered and we don't bat an eye. Anyway, she's helped out by the guys who just a little bit ago annihilated what you can only assume were some of her friends and escapes to safety in the chopper, going off to start a new life in America, right? I mean, every other member of her group was up for death, so she's very clearly would be seen as a political prisoner, and she does appear again, albeit very briefly, in Predator 2. There, she's being interrogated by Key's team, so that seems to be what happened. She was a prisoner and was brought in for questioning, and considering that she was a part of what was essentially a terrorist group, it's pretty hard to think that they would just let her go. Side note, the fact that she pops up in Predator 2 gives her the unique distinction of being the only character in the series that appears in more than one film. There's no further information about the character and not even any extended universe appearances to go off of, but there is some information to go on. Now, how criminally her cohorts actually acted appears to be questionable. We know that Dylan made up a portion of the information given about what the rebels have been up to, and one of the fake bits of intel was that they had kidnapped civilians. Plus, Dylan's ops were somewhat deniable and also possibly not officially sanctioned, so it's unclear exactly how much that the actual CIA would have wanted them eliminated. It's not too unlikely that a deal could have been cut for her for information about the mission that wiped out her crew, the alien that bombed those guys out, and the nuke that wiped it out as well. It's not far-fetched to think that there's a somewhat happy ending for her and that she wouldn't have been set up with a new identity in the US, but let's also face it, it's not like she went with Dutch because she learned her people were doing the wrong thing. She still believes in the cause, and now her friends are all dead. If set loose, I'd imagine her drive would be all the stronger to carry on the fight, so I imagine the US government would want to keep her sealed up as much as they can. Question number 5. What's up with that gun? At the end of Predator 2, there's a pretty memorable moment in which Harrigan defeats the Predator and a bunch more show up. Now, it seems like he's now got his hands full and they're just gonna kill him, but it turns out that they're honorable creatures and they see him as completing his rite of passage in defeating his foe. I'm not entirely sure what these guys were doing the entire rest of the movie, like were they just chilling on the ship, drinking martinis and being like, oh, hey, how's Rudy doing on his hunt? Oh, he's cut off a criminal's head? Looking good, Rudy. Anyway, they pick up the body and carry him away, and before leaving, they hand Harrigan this gun, and it's an old school flintlock pistol that has the name Raphael Adolini on it. Now, this is a scene that is particularly pointed at by lots of viewers as confusing them. And there's some simple answers, but I'm not sure they're as simple as they seem. First of all, the origins of the pistol were explored in a Dark Horse comic short story that explained that Adolini was a pirate that was betrayed by his crew. While he fought them, he was joined in the fray by a predator that helped him out. When they were the last two left, it seemed like that they would fight each other before one of Adolini's men shot him as a dying act. As he passed, he gave the pistol to the Predator, who then gave it to Harrigan. But why? It's mostly seen as a sign of respect, like, oh, hey, you beat our guy, so here's this trophy. But that seems like a kind of dumb trophy. Oh, hey, you killed this massive beast that murdered a couple of your friends, so here's one of your own weapons that's hopelessly outdated. It's not like the Predator would be able to comprehend that it had any sort of monetary value. And they seem to understand weapon technology enough to realize that he was giving him something insanely out of date. Isn't that the equivalent of winning some sort of tech competition and someone is like, oh, hey, you won, here's a prize, and then hands you a Motorola Razr? Well, the novelization offers a different answer, and one that I find a touch more suited to the situation. It was a sort of trophy, but also a kind of a warning. It can be seen as a sort of a message. They've been coming here for a while, and this silly little gun here represents just how much further advanced that they are. They allow him to live as a sign of respect for defeating their compatriot, but the pistol was a symbol of, hey, this is what you are to us, an antiquated society. Taken that way, it's a pretty passive-aggressive move for a dude whose jaw looks like something you get in a bag at the Boiling Crab. Question number 6. So then what happened to Harrigan? Mike Harrigan, the main character of Predator 2, was portrayed by the great Danny Glover, and he may not have been the hero that we wanted at the time, but he was the hero that that film needed. He was badass and smart, and the only one to acknowledge that the alien mouths happened to look like... What did you say again, Mike?
Okay, pussy face.
Now, we know that Harrigan never appeared in the films, and in fact, he wasn't even mentioned, but there is several bits of information to be gained. First of all, it should be mentioned that the character was supposed to reappear in the series. He was originally going to be on the alien planet in Predators, a part of the hunt. Glover was offered the role, but he eventually declined due to personal reasons, and as such, the role was rewritten as Roland Nolan, and Lawrence Fishburne was cast. And I hope that it was drastically rewritten, because if Harrigan would have been that big of a dick and then gone down like a chump like that, I think I'd be pretty pissed. But even though he never showed back up again in the movies, the character did appear in other media. He showed up in the 2017 story Drug War as part of an anthology book called Predator, If It Bleeds. In this story, it's told that he remained on the police force until his eventual retirement. He's now an advisor for the police forces around the world for methods of dealing with gang violence. And while in Brazil, he runs into Garber, the character played by Adam Baldwin in The Predator 2. And he's there running guns. The two of them come face to face with another predator facing off against the alien, each other, and local gangs. He would also briefly appear in another book called Predator Stalking Shadows, which takes place immediately after the events of the second film and briefly describes Harrigan covered in ash. Now, neither of these are strictly canon, but there's really no reason for them not to be, and give a pretty solid look at what would have happened to the character afterwards. Word is that he never appeared in the other movies because he was, and I quote, getting too old for this shit. Question number 7. In Predators, why does the alternate planet just look like Earth? Our main characters are meant to be on some sort of alien world in this movie, as evident by the skyline. They've been taken from Earth and transplanted here, but why does it look so much like our planet, even containing some of our native plant life, including things that had gone extinct? Well, it goes without saying that it's mainly because it was shot on Earth, like they didn't go to some alien planet to film, duh. And of course, it's cheaper to just make the plant life look like ours instead of just either constantly doing up sets with expensive prop alien plants or having them against a green screen and placing them amongst digital flora. It was shot in both Texas and Hawaii, which is why part of it looks like a typical forest and yet others are more jungle. But there's actually an in-film reason for why everything looks so familiar. It seems that on a live chat with fans, Robert Rodriguez revealed that the intention was that none of the plant life on that planet was native to it. The entire landscape was hand-cultivated by the predators to be their sort of playground, like a game reserve. It would seem as if they had been transporting plant life there for a very long time, and judging from Edwin recognizing one for millions of years. Which is kind of funny to think that that sort of implies that they have some sort of like space gardeners that have to go there periodically to maintain and tend to all of this. The other interesting aspect of this is the concept that what's here is primarily Earth-based, and that would sort of indicate that it's because this is their ground for human hunting. based on the atmospheric aspects being the same as ours, that'd kind of back that up as well. What's weird about that is that another creature is there, the one that's based on the original Van Damme Predator suit, and they're hunting that thing too. But if this planet were expressly designed for human hunting and our life forms, it is a little bizarre that they just threw this other guy on there too. Seems like he'd be at a disadvantage since the environment would be far away from his natural habitat. Kind of a dick move. Hashtag justice for Van Damme bug thing or something. Question number 8. In The Predator, if the first one that we see is trying to help the humans, why is it killing everyone? Okay, here's what's going on in The Predator. So this one comes to Earth, and we're told that his whole thing isn't actually hunting people. We're told that the predators have been using DNA to better themselves and have been doing so forever. And that's what they were doing in the first couple of movies. They were hunting, sure, but looking for prime genetic specimens to get their DNA from. And I already hate saying all of this, but now that they're concerned that they'll run out of human samples as the Earth is rapidly dying due to climate change, so they're scrambling to get as much as they can. There's also some sort of civil war between these predators, and this guy has come to Earth to help us, or so they claim. He's the one that provides the exoskeleton suit at the end, and yeah, there's just so many questions about this whole thing. But let's just go with this one. If this guy is so good, why is he just indiscriminately killing humans here? Check it out. He crashes his ship here, and first thing he does is kill this guy and string him up and then wipe out the rest of the crew. He's captured, but after waking up, immediately starts attacking every single person in sight and kills them. Some effort has been made to state that he's acting in self-defense and only in self-defense, but come on. In this first instance, let's just say that this soldier attacked the predator and it killed him in self-defense. But hey, this is a race that he's trying to communicate with and work with. So he what? Skins the guy and hangs him from a tree? Yep, that really sounds like self-defense there, guy. Then, when more humans see what you did, of course they attack, and you, apparently some form of more intelligent and advanced society, don't say, oh well, of course this is how they react. Even after being caught, it wakes up and sees itself surrounded by humans studying it. Again, this is not some sort of primitive caveman species. It knows what scientists are and has to understand what's going on. And again, these are people that it's trying to help or something. But instead of making any effort, and I mean any effort at all, to communicate, it just snaps and starts hacking away at everyone. No, I think based on his actions, he never intended to help the humans. That suit at the ending was never meant for us. Earth was just meant to be a temporary hideout, a refuge. The suit was meant for either itself or some other emissary from another race that it had deemed advanced enough to utilize it. It's clear from every single action that we see from it that it considers humans as less than significant, simply insects in its way. The way that it doesn't even attempt to communicate with anyone in the film, even someone that it clearly marks as not a threat, shows that it is not its intention. Question number 9. Are Alien and Predator in the same universe? Okay, this is gonna get complicated, but it's really not, because here's the thing. There's really no such thing as canon. Canon is an invented thing. If you want something to be canon, then it is. I know that filmmakers always establish something as official canon, and then there's this whole notion that this is the way that things are and how it's intended and so forth. But that only stretches as far as the next filmmaker. Let's face it, Laurie Strode was dead. That was canon. Her daughter was Jamie Lloyd, until it was decided that wasn't canon, and she was alive and had no daughter and had a son instead. And then died again, until it was decided that that wasn't canon. Now, not only was she alive again, but she was no longer Michael's sister. So, take canon with a grain of salt, because in the very next film, it can all change. But anyway, in my Alien Unanswered Question video, I talked about how the AVP films aren't considered a part of the Alien universe, although I made a case that they could be. But what about the Predator movies? Are they linked to the Alien films? Are they linked to the AVP films? Let's investigate using only the films. Comics and novels are not counted here, since at any point their official status is suspect. Way back in Predator 2, the universes were first seemingly linked by showing that alien skull in the City Hunters trophy cast. There had already been an Alien vs. Predator comic book, and this skull was sort of a hint that this could happen here too, that these universes are linked. Interestingly enough, this is the only clear link between this film and the Alien series. There's some speculation that the jawbone that the Berserker in Predators is wearing is from a xenomorph, but it has a distinctly different structure. No alien that we have seen has a set of teeth like this, although it's possible it could be from a deacon or something, I guess, but again, speculation. Some people have also theorized that the Super Predator from the 2018 film contained alien DNA, giving it the extra size and agility, but again, theorized. So, the only real evidence that we have is that one skull. There's absolutely no hints in the Alien universe that predators exist there, and in fact, seem to state that David invented the Xenos at around 2104 or so, meaning that a skull couldn't exist in 1997 to be in that ship. It's certainly possible that it could have been the result of an earlier experiment from the engineers, or that aliens existed before David's tampering, as I laid out in that Alien video, but it seems to be their way of separating it from everything else. Now, as for AVP, there's nothing there to directly contradict any sort of continuity between the two series like that there is in Alien. There's no information about the Predator race, which I guess are called Yautja, but I'm not going to say that a million times, so I'm going to call them Predators, to interfere with info from the AVP films. And weirdly, Shane Black said that the Predator would be a follow-up to Predator and Predator 2, and would ignore Predators and the AVP films. So you would think that he was disregarding them and doing a sort of a soft reboot, but again, there's nothing that conflicts. It's not like anyone says, these were the only incidents with these creatures. These movies can coexist, and in fact, right here, even though Black said that he was ignoring them, this is the alien tail spear thing that Lex fashioned in the finale of the first AVP. I'm sure that it's just a little Easter egg, but let's face it, it's as valid as the alien skull in Predator 2. If you're going to use that as some sort of evidence that Alien and Predator are in the same universe, then this spear is equal evidence that Predator and AVP are as well. Also, the directors of Requiem have stated that their original plans for the third AVP film, which of course never got made, tied everything together. In it, Weyland-Yutani would use that Predator tech they recover at the ending of Requiem to develop the means for space travel, including the Nostromo. But again, that film never being made, and Scott's later plans changed all of that. But, using the knowledge that I discussed before, again, much like I said in that earlier Alien video, if you want all of these films to coexist in one happy universe, the evidence is there. And remember, kids, canon is a bunch of hooey anyway, so if you want to come out and say, yeah, I think that all of these films take place in the same universe, and then some gomer hits you up with like an actually, well then just, you know what, just put your fingers in your ears and get to the chopper. Question number 10. Is the first movie the manliest film of all time? I mean, isn't it? It feels like it. I suppose it really relies on exactly how you define manhood, but in terms of that mid-80s, men are all about bulging biceps and shooting massive guns, it sure seems like it. If you throw the phrase manliest film of all time into Google, the top hit is a list from IMDb that has Predator in the top spot. Although the second hit is from a site called Men's XP, and it has it ranked at number freaking 88. It has it lower than, let me see, Blazing Saddles, and number 1 is Shawshank Redemption. Like I think that I have a pretty progressive view of manliness, and am not exactly one to say that manliness boils down to, oh hey, I can beat you up. But come on guys, look at this.
Son of a bitch.
And then this.
This stuff will make you a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus, just like me.
And of course, famously, this.
You're hit. You're bleeding, man.
I ain't got time to bleed.
And how does that even make sense? Like, you're in such a hurry that normal blood flow isn't happening. Your body is in such a state of rush that your veins aren't working and pumping blood. Well, clearly the Predator isn't having it, because he's like, make time, bitch. But what really makes this manly in my eyes is showing that these guys aren't just brawn, but they're also heart. Like, Mac goes out of his way to mourn his friend, and Dutch genuinely seems to care about his team. But let's go beyond the notion of, oh hey, this is a film about big buff guys, and boil it down to its concept. It's about hunting. Kill or be killed. Hunt or be hunted. It's a very caveman thing. Strictly about guys surviving. They do make sure to include a female presence, but they don't shove a love story in there unless you count Dutch and the Predator, because let me tell you, there is some prime unrequited stuff going on during that final laughing scene. But overall, like Arnold's body at the time of filming, there's no extra fat. It's just this lean story of dudes in the woods overcoming death. Some of them, well, one of them, they don't really overcome death, do they? But yeah, type in the phrase manliest film ever, and you'll get a lot of responses and a lot of lists. And there's one film that ends up on almost all of them, even if it's not always on the top. And that film is freaking Predator. So there you have it, 10 questions about some classic movies, the Predator movies. There's, 4 and then 2 of the AVP movies. So I guess they have 6 entries altogether. Yeah, these were a lot of fun. There's lots more questions. I didn't even really get into a lot of the backstory of the Predators that we've learned from alternate materials like the comic books or novels or whatever. There is quite a bit of other information to be gained from there that I didn't really get that far into. So there probably is going to be a follow-up video to this at some point in the future. But if you have any specific questions about the Predator world that you would like to ask, put those in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the answers that I gave, or if you want to correct me based upon some comic book that you read 15 years ago that may or may not be canon and contradicts what I say, go ahead, put that down below too. I actually like reading that stuff. I'm aware of a lot of the Predator stuff. It's just hard to use that for something that is in the movies, because that stuff is so randomly thrown aside. But anyhow, I do want to hear about it, so put that down below. Leave me your likes, your subscribes, share this out to your friends, do all that stuff. If you want to go to my Patreon page like these guys over here do, who help support me, go to patreon.com/movietimelines. I appreciate that. These guys are awesome for helping to support this channel. You guys can do so as well too, which I would also appreciate. And I'll see you very shortly for another great video. Thanks guys, and bye-bye.